If you're anything like me, you might often tell yourself, I'll read after I do this, or I'll read when I get home from work, or I'll finish that book over the weekend, right? Do you do that? And then never actually end up reading? Yeah, I've been there. It always seems like there's never enough time to do anything, and I've noticed that even for myself, as much as I prioritize reading, it will definitely be pushed to the very last of my priority list when I have a ton going on. And I know there's a million and one reasons why somebody can't fit reading into their day. We all have families and school and work and homework and chores and other things that keep us from actually having time to read. So this is in no ways trying to shame anybody for not making time for reading. If you don't have time, you don't have time, and that is okay. Reading will always be there. Your books will definitely be there on your shelves when you are ready to come back to it. And when you are ready, I have a video for you up here talking about how to get back into reading. But for now, this is just a video trying to give you some tips and tricks on how to squeeze just a little bit of reading time into your day. So let's start off with the big one, the one that's probably the hardest to change because I am in the middle of trying to work on this one right now. And that's the screen time. I am embarrassed to admit that after tracking my screen time usage in December, I spent what equated to 11 days of my time on social media. 11 days. And it's possible that some of that was just leaving my phone open on something while I talked to somebody else or got something done, but the screen time said 11 days. What could I have done in those 11 days? How many videos could I have put out? How many books could I have read? How much of my house could I have reorganized? So much, so much. So I recommend looking at your screen time and seeing just how much of that social media usage that you can replace. Or maybe it's your movie watching or TV shows, or maybe it's your video games. If you really want to find some more time for reading, I recommend swapping out a little bit of that time. And because I like to see my screen time being used for something productive, I like to keep my audiobooks open on my phone as I'm listening to the stories so that I get credit for those hours and not sad social media ones. And if you are willing to, please confess how many hours you've spent on social media in the comments so that I don't feel so bad. Days. I could have read so many books. My TBR could be done by now. And speaking of audiobooks, my next tip includes them. Multitasking. Which might seem obvious, but I often find myself not multitasking to the best of my ability. I'll be in the middle of folding laundry, hanging up laundry, and realize that I could have had an audiobook playing that entire time, and I just did that chore in silence. And I could have been reading. So if there's chores that you have to do or other things that you are obligated to do, like folding laundry, cleaning your car, washing the dishes, cooking dinner, going to the grocery store, or even working out, swapping out music for an audiobook might be another way to get in a little bit more reading time. And if you've been around for any period of time on my channel, you know that I love Hoopla and Libby for getting audiobooks. All you need is a library card, which is free, and you can link those to either one of those apps depending on which your library is linked to, and you can get audiobooks for free. And it is the best thing I've ever discovered. Thank you to BookTube. And something else to think about with the multitasking is if you can do it at all at your work. I know that some jobs you absolutely cannot. My current job right now and the tasks that I have don't really permit me to listen to audiobooks all that often, but before, in a different position that I held at this job, I was able to listen to audiobooks nearly every single day, all day long, and I finished so many books during that time span. So if you have things at work like scanning or copying or cleaning things up or doing anything that's very routine based that doesn't require a lot of focus and attention, I think that as long as it is allowed in your workplace, definitely throw in an audiobook and listen to that in swap of music or podcast. And I know there's some people who don't think that listening to audiobooks count as reading, but my philosophy is if it lowers your TBR, it counts. So listen to all the audiobooks that you want to. You're still gonna know the story and you're still gonna be able to talk about it. So audiobooks count as reading. Everyone say it with me. And some bonus tips with that one too is to definitely up your audiobook speed. I feel like if I'm doing a task at a lower audiobook speed, the task feels 10,000 times longer. So slowly increase until you're at a speed that still makes sense to you and you can still follow along with. And with that, I've found that noise canceling headphones and headphones that go over your ears make it a lot easier of a reading experience, and it's easier to hear everything while you're multitasking, especially with cleaning. Listening to an audiobook with AirPods and vacuuming, not an easy feat. Another way to fit in more reading is to do it on your commute, as long as it is safe. I am not very good at listening to audiobooks while I'm driving, so I tend to not do that at all. But if you are able to and you know that it is safe for you, I would recommend doing that while driving instead of a podcast or music. Or if you take some sort of public transit and you can read physically on that, I recommend swapping at least one direction of your commute for some reading time. I personally need to have some music in the mornings to wake me up, so I totally understand not wanting to swap both directions for reading, but it's something to think about. And this is also something that you could do with traveling too. Every time I fly, I always take my Kindle and my headphones and I listen to a book on the plane instead of watching movies or TV shows. Every now and then I still want to watch a movie, but for the most part I do try and read as much of a small book as I can, hopefully trying to knock one out in one flight. Something else to try is to read right when you wake up or right before you go to bed. If you are a morning person, which I am not, maybe you could try setting your alarm 30 minutes earlier so that you can start your morning routine 30 minutes earlier and have 30 minutes to read. Or if you're a night owl like me, this looks a little bit more like starting your nighttime routine a little bit earlier so that before you go to bed you can squeeze in some reading and not scrolling on your phone, which I never ever do. Not me, ever. But if you're really dedicated to reading, you could try both. I will not be trying both because waking up extra early, not for me, but you might want to. Who knows? That would be an hour of reading. But when it comes down to it, adding more reading time into our life has to be a choice. And my biggest tip is going to be to schedule it out. Treat it like any other plans that you might have. Set a time and show up for yourself. And if you have any friends or family members who would be interested in having more reading time in their life, maybe you set aside some time to read together instead of going out for dinner or whatever you choose to do with them. It can be a fun little night in where you talk about the books that you're currently reading and try and recommend them to each other, or just hear about the different genres and books that you are interested in. Or it could just be a book club where you read the same book at the same time. I did a little bit of math for this and I found out that if you read anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes a day, that is equivalent to about 5 to 15 books per year. So these aren't tips that are going to get you to 100 books per year, but it is something to help you read just a little bit more. So I hope that at least one of these tips helps you squeeze in a little bit more reading time, and if they do, come back and let me know which one was the biggest help for you. If you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you next Tuesday for another bookish video. Alright, goodbye.